Hello from the Music Interview Corner. I have something special for you tonight, guys. I have an amazing metal band from New Zealand. We're here with Alien Weaponry, and I have two here for you. Hi, two.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking time for the interview.
I mean, it's nice and early for me here. It's what's it, 9:30 in the morning, so I'm up and got the whole day ready to do interviews.
Oh, cool. I can see the sunlight. Yeah, we're exactly 12 hours apart. I'm in Berlin, Germany, and we have 9:30 in the evening.
Right, yeah, we're the perfect 12-hour gap, which is nice and easy to do Europe because of that reason.
Very soon, on March 28th, your third studio album, Te Ara, is gonna come out. What can your fans expect?
Well, how we've been describing Tera, we're very excited for this because I think it's been a great evolution of the band's sound, and how we tried to achieve that was going first album, very successful album and the first album that introduced a lot of people to the band. Catchy songs, good riffs, but maybe a little simple. And that was written during when they were teenagers. So like your knowledge and your growth it's in the early stages of, your life.
Mhm.
Second album, when that came out, we were like trying to make a more technical record. So to show off a little bit of the musical instrument growth and those sorts of things, we're not 15 anymore. But it fell at a difficult time. It was during the pandemic, and so there were so many things sort of fighting against it. Um, Maybe the song's not as catchy as the first album. So when we came into this third record, we wanted to try and fuse the best elements of both albums. Catchiness from the first and what people loved about the songwriting, and then the technicality of the second to be like, look, we're 25 now. So since the first album, it's been 8 years of honing our craft, whether that's playing our instruments or singing, to show off, to show people that we're not teenagers anymore. But if you fell in love with the first album, then we wanted to give you the melodies and the song catchiness that everybody loved. So hopefully we've achieved a nice combination of those two elements for this third album.
I think you did because I could already listen to it and I really like it.
Great. And it seems to be the sentiment we've been getting across all the interviews so far when I mentioned like that the goal with the album is this kind of hybrid. And even though the fans haven't got their hands on the full thing yet, we have seen these comments on the singles already too, which is great. Like based off of one song or two songs that people are already going, "Oh, it feels like a combination of the past two albums." Is great to see before they even get their hands on the whole thing. So we can only hope that the sentiment carries forward.
Yeah, one of your singles that is already out and one of my favorite songs on your albums is A Thousand Friends. Can you tell
Yeah,
me
yeah,
more
yeah.
about the
That's it.
inspiration for the song?
I can lyrically. So from a lyrical perspective, Lewis writes all the English songs.
Mhm.
And Lewis has always been he's kind of the opposite to me in this sense. He's never been a big fan of social media, he doesn't like how it changes the way people wish to, present themselves or the way that they communicate with each other online. And he wrote a song about it, and of course the hook of the song is 1,000 friends, but you're all alone. How many of those friends are actually would be there for you in real life? It's just arbitrary numbers. It's faceless profile pictures and all this thing, and so that was his sort of whole ethos behind the lyrical content of the song. From the musical side of it, I wrote that song, the guitars and all that, and for me, it's a homage to that early 2000s metalcore. Trivium is my favorite band, and I used to love the melody that would come through their riffs, fast riffs, chuggy sort of riffs, and the classic metalcore riff, that is the front riff of 1,000 friends. And initially we were actually a little concerned that it was going to sound too much like those bands. And so we almost didn't want that song on the album because we're like, oh, I don't know, it sounds too much like Trivium or it sounds too much like this. And maybe we'll put the lyrics on another song, on another set of music, I should say. Um, but Josh Wilbur, our producer, loved it. Our label loved it, and our management loved it, and even our crew loved it. They were like, "Oh man, this song's good. This song's good." So we were like, "Okay, okay, we'll trust you then." But if people start complaining that it sounds like a ripoff, but what we ended up, so we were a little nervous going into the release day of A Thousand Friends. But thankfully, to much relief, the response was that a lot of people recognized the homage to that music, So there was a lot of people like, oh wow, it reminds me of early 2000s metalcore, and wow, it's like kind of kicked off a nostalgia response for a lot of people. But in a way, I think that they recognized that there was still being one of our songs because that was the key. Was like you want the influence to show, not you don't want to be called a copycat, and that's always a tricky balance to find with any art, creating art of any kind, because obviously we're all influenced by somebody. So that song in particular, we were a little nervous about. But yeah, the response has been super awesome. And yeah, we do like that song. It's not that we didn't like the song. It's just we were worried that people might jump on us for sounding like a era of music that doesn't really exist anymore. But it seems like maybe it's been long enough that it kicked off the nostalgia for people instead. And so the response was awesome. And I think it's a good message. So it's
It
got a lot
is.
of things going.
And I also love the video with the big iPhone in the background. It's an amazing.
Right. Yeah, it was a cool video actually, and nice and simple to shoot. Well, for us, Lewis had 2 full days doing all the narrative stuff, but for me and Henry, it was like we just stand in a white room and headbang. It was great.
And who had the idea for this video?
Actually, so the video idea came from our director, Alex. Um, we'd kind of pitched a few ideas, but then of course, us as the artist, it's like our ideas can extend beyond the restraints of our budget. And so then it's their job to kind of be like, well, we could kind of do this, and like if we keep it into the White Room studio, which is simple, and then the phone screen thing, and have Lewis lying on the phone like he's alone and isolated, and then these sort of faceless, hooded people that represent all those faceless people that you would never meet in real life who talk to you and give you likes on the internet. So it ended up being quite a cool concept. So yeah, we can credit our director for the majority of it.
And you just mentioned that Luis is writing the English songs. And I don't know, most people know that by now, but for the people who don't know, all of your band members have Maori ancestry. And
Mhm.
usually your albums consist of half English songs and half songs that are written in Te Reo Maori. I hope I'm
Mhm.
pronouncing it correctly. Why is it important to you to also include songs in Te Reo Maori?
Yeah, for the Maori stuff, it's that there is some subject matter that we feel is only tellable through the medium that is Te Reo Maori. So when we're talking about colonialism, for example, it feels appropriate or more appropriate to sing about it in Te Reo Maori. Although in saying that, sometimes the message we want to be extra clear, so we do the half and half songs. So you've heard the album. The first
Yes.
song, Crown, is off the bat half and half. And that's a song that's about the sort of imbalance and incarceration and what colonialism does to minority groups, in this context, specifically Maori, but it is an applicable subject matter for people all over the world. So because of that, because minorities are who have been subject to colonialism find themselves being disproportionately in poverty, and then that leads to the crime rates and whatever, we felt it was important to do a half and half. So sometimes the half and half goes because yes, we might be singing about something specifically Maori, but it is applicable to other people. Um, like Taniwha, which is the other half and half song, and it's kind of a song about karma. If I was to keep it simple, it's about karma through, greed, and that greed eventually will catch up to you. Um, and in the context of the song, the metaphor through the taniwha, which is the Maori word for monster. They are the Maori monsters and guardians of the world and the earth. So, but then there's songs like the first single, Moko, which is specifically about moko, the traditional Maori tattooing. So that song specifically is about something very specifically Maori, so it is most appropriate in the Maori language. Tamanui Te Ara is a song about a Maori story, creation story. Maui, everybody, if they know Maui by now because of Moana, but Maui is actually a very significant figure throughout most of Polynesia. He's kind of the Polynesian Hercules, so to speak, um, just for comparison. And so Tamanui Te Rā gets sung in Māori because it's about a Māori demigod, you know. So
Mhm.
that's kind of our thought process behind how we choose the language is about the subject matter of a song and what is more appropriate, you know.
Yeah, and I read a story that it took until 2019 until there was a news anchor on TV in New Zealand who was allowed to present the mainstream news. And her name is Orini Kaipara, and she has also the traditional
Yes.
facial tattoo.
Yeah, she does. And yeah, she was one of the ones that she created quite a viral news story because of that, you know. And of course a lot of people have very mixed opinions about tattoos in general and then face tattoos even more, you know. So there's been a long journey of again, thanks to colonialism, which is what the song Moko is about, of trying to reclaim a tradition that has been shunned aside by Christianity, colonialism in general, societal norms from an earlier age, and how we're trying to re-educate and destigmatize this tradition and be like, not all face tattoos are gang tattoos, you know,
Oh yeah,
like,
but
like
if we look at this beautiful traditional that you have, are people really thinking it's gang tattoos?
oh yeah, there's it's a lot of people do, and a big reason why in New Zealand at least, overseas around the world, you get all sorts of responses, of course, and that is to be expected because it's not from there. But here in New Zealand, a big reason they're associated with gangs is because there was a period of the history where the tradition was basically extinct. Like nobody was doing it anymore. And in the 70s, I want to say, I'm terrible with dates, but I'm going to guess around the 70s, gangs who are made up again of predominantly Maori and Polynesians, Pacific Islanders, because again, gangs get sort of developed out of poverty and it's minority groups that tend to be in poverty. And so a lot of these gangs that were being created in that era were made up of Maori. And what are gangs famous for doing? Everything the government tells them not to do. So in that was our moko. They started getting moko as a sort of a middle finger to the governments, as a protest. And so the first time that a lot of people, a lot of New Zealanders had ever seen moko in their life, because it was hadn't been practiced for a long time, was on the face of gangs. So it became heavily associated with gang members for people of a certain generation. And then there was sort of a later period where people were like, "Ah, we need to start moving the association away from gang members and giving it to, I'm not going to say normal people, but people of other vocations, you know, so people who aren't gang members, people who are like ordinary news anchors and myself, musician or whatever, and you know, to try and remind people that actually this is a Maori thing, which is why the gang members were getting it done because they were Maori. But you know, tattoos already had stigma during that kind of era. And so then it just added a whole bunch of layers. That's a very complex conversation. But anyway, that's the the short version why.
And did you ever feel, were there concrete situations where you felt discriminated against because you have your tattoo?
Um, you know, I feel like I'm quite fortunate. I haven't had too many. But I'm going to say that the experience of Maori like myself who have pale skin
Mhm.
with moko is very different to those Maori out there who have dark skin and moko, you know, because those Maori would probably be discriminated against without moko because they have dark skin. Where my existence prior to having moko is pale skin. So just going through my day-to-day life, people aren't like inherently jumping at me and going, "Oh, you're brown, you're Maori," you know. So, for me, I think that privilege carries forward even to when I do have moko. That the discrimination is minimized. Um, at least here in New Zealand. I've had some pretty funny interactions overseas, particularly Germany.
Oh,
Germans
really?
are very, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Were they
They are
scared of
very,
you?
yeah. I had one lady who
Oh,
didn't want to
no.
sell me a train ticket. I was in the train
I'm
station
so
and
sorry.
she was like, you shouldn't be in Germany. I would never let you live in Germany. And I was like, wow, I just want a train ticket, ma'am.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'd like to apologize in the name of my people. Really shitty behavior.
Yeah, it was quite funny, and I'm used to it, so to speak. But I was with our drum tech Charlie, who's Belgian, and he was with me, and he was like, his whole mind was blown. He was getting quite angry with this lady, and I was like, it's all right, Charlie. I was like, she's an old lady, she'll never see me again, Um, and which people might argue about whether you should have to do this, but like one of the things that went into the decision for me to get mine done was like people are going to treat you differently. Like, so you kind of have to come to terms with that before you get it done. So for me, when that sort of thing happens, I brush it off. I'm never in like physical danger. That's a different thing. But some
Mhm.
grumpy old lady in the train station, what does it really matter? But yeah, there's some funny ones.
And how old were you when you got your tattoo?
Ah, it was right after the Gojira tour in the US, so 2021. So I was 21. I
Mhm.
just turned 22. I must have just turned 22.
Oh, yeah, and I would also like to talk about the history of your band. First of all, why did you call your band Alien Weaponry?
Yeah, so the two brothers, who
And
they really conceived the band when they were like kids, like
they
10
were
years
eight,
old.
right? They were 8 and 10, is that
Yeah,
correct?
well, yeah, so if Lewis was 8, then Henry would have been 10. Um, and as any 8 and 10-year-old, you're gonna name a band after something you think is cool. And
Oh,
they
of
really
course.
liked the movie District 9, if anyone's ever
Oh,
seen that
that's one
movie,
of
the
my
sci-fi
favorites. That's
movie.
such an
Yeah,
amazing movie.
yeah. And in that they say alien weaponry and they're talking about the guns. And so that was the inspiration behind the name is District 9 and all the alien weapons in that movie. And it's that simple.
Oh, amazing. Because I was already, my mind was going there because there's also these theories or conspiracy theories that indigenous people are connected somehow to ancient civilizations, which might be connected to aliens. So I thought first it has to do with that.
Yeah, well, and then one of the other theories that we've seen floating around was the idea that because of Kai Tangata, the song, and in the music video at the front, it talks about the Maori chief who brought muskets back from trading with the British, and so there's a good sect of our fans who hypothesized that the name represents alien weaponry, refers to the alien nature of gunpowder when it was introduced
Oh,
to Maori in the 1800s, which we like. We really like that as an interpretation of our name because it's true. When if you were we were all hand-to-hand combat type weaponry, stone-based weaponry, and when the British showed up with cannons and muskets, that would have been quite a like aliens showing up out of nowhere. But it's not the original name for the band. Although we do acknowledge and we really like that interpretation of the name.
yeah, it's also great that you inspire your fans to get so creative themselves.
Right, right. And we like seeing that a lot. With we see it more with Lewis's lyrics versus the Maori stuff because that's a little more direct. But fans interpret a lot of the songs completely differently to how Lewis wrote the song or what he wrote the songs about. Which is cool. We like that. We like to see how people attach to music differently.
And how is it for you to be in a band with two brothers? Do you sometimes feel that they're like ganging up on you when it comes to decisions?
Actually, not so much like on that side of things. We get along quite well in terms of the decision making. Actually, I might even argue that me and Lewis get along with our decision making, and we're kind of always butting shoulders with Henry, maybe. But where you really notice that their brothers is on tour when you have sibling rivalry and sibling bickering, and like little things like anyone with siblings will know. But when you have that like in your work environment, you go, oh yeah, they're brothers. You can tell which ones are brothers, and you go, no, stop poking me, stop poking, no, that's my sandwich, not your sandwich, like little sort of schoolboys again.
Do you sometimes have to separate them and make peace?
Yeah, it happens sometimes. It happens sometimes. It's definitely a little bit. And once upon a time, their parents are like, there was a time of the band where the boys were, underage. So their parents were on tour with them so that they could even play in venues. They were doing American tours, and Lewis was 16 and Henry was 18, and you got to be 21 to
Mhm.
be in those venues. And so they had to have their parents with them. So that they were like had a parental guardian there so that they could even play the show. And then when they played the show, they had to like instantly leave because they were so young. And when it was like that too, then you really notice that like it's a family. So then you've got siblings bickering and then parents being parents to two siblings, and now it's the parents no longer do it. Now the boys are old enough, we have our own crew and stuff like that. So I think it puts a little less pressure on the boys to be perfect all the time because they don't have a mum and dad, looming over.
But it's kind of amazing that their parents were so supportive to go on tour with them.
Oh, 1000%, and I think because of how difficult that would have been without them, how do you tour a foreign country at 16 years old? I can't even imagine how you do that. I joined the band when I was 20. And even then I felt like it was going to be quite a change in lifestyle, let alone 16, formative years of teenagehood. Um, so yeah, their parents did a lot to help support them through that. And so once now that they're old enough and they'd moved on from their parents, still acknowledge how important their effort and support was.
This is already a really cool tour story, but one of my favorite topics is also what's the craziest thing you and the brothers have ever done on tour?
Oh, I mean, we're relatively well behaved, sort of gone are the days of the sex, drugs, rock and roll thing that everybody expects out of heavy metal or, rock and roll bands. And um but these days it's like this, people have this to go like this. If you're doing something silly and they just jam a camera in your face and it's posted all over the internet, you kind of have to be a little more vigilant.
You
And
got to
you
feed your
don't want to
thousand
be.
friends, you know? That's why.
Right, right, right. And you got to be careful of those 1,000 friends that will very quickly post you online and to make fun of you, or to get cancelled or any of these things that are a part of the social dynamic these days. And then there's also the fact that like it's hard. It's hard work to play a show hungover, you know? So I can't imagine how some of these bands used to do it every day, party, 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 and blah, 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 blah. But it's not to say we don't. We kind of, our ethos is like we pick one night on a tour to kind of have a lot of fun, maybe
Mhm.
before a day off, maybe towards the end of the tour. And for some reason, that always seems to line up with Poland, which is a great place to have a party. So we love Poland, and we have had some very fun nights in Poland.
There was also a documentary about your band, a documentary movie released last year. It's called I will try, Kua Tupu Te Ara. Is
Yeah,
correct.
perfect.
Oh, great. And it premiered at the legendary Tribeca Film Festival in the US. Can you tell me more about this documentary?
Yeah, so that has been a long process, the filming of that documentary. It started 4 years before I joined the band. I think 3 to 4 years before I was in the band, and then I remember my first audition with the band. It was like, boom, there's this big camera in your face. What is it like auditioning for Alien? You're like, whoa, what is this? And they're like, oh yeah, we've got this documentary that we've been filming. That's been filming for the past 3, 4 years, and then it continued to film for another 3, 4 years. Like it was only done last year, so it was like a nearly 8 years of filming, and really, it's a yes, it's a documentary about a metal band, but really at its core, it's a coming of age story. That's really what it is. It's coming of age through the eyes of teenagers in a metal band. So the story really follows like Lewis from 16 to 21, you know, and 21 being the generally accepted adulthood um age. And so the end of the documentary takes place at his 21st birthday, and it's about the growth of them, two brothers who started this in their teenage years and even younger, growth through, you know, separating in that time period from their parents, like I was talking about before, going from playing little places with 10 people to, you know, playing some of the biggest metal festivals in the world in
Mhm.
front of tens of thousands of people. All while giving you an insight. This is my personal favorite thing about the documentary. We're used to seeing documentaries of bands who are already pretty famous. And so
Mhm.
they've got all the big buses and the private jets and the whatever and the, you know, they're playing the stadiums. This shows you what it's like for 99% of the rest of the music scene, you know, is like these in vans and the sort of the actual hard work that goes into making it to that stage and the less glamorous side of being a touring band, especially a touring metal band. Yeah, it's a great documentary, and it's now available for streaming in Australia and New Zealand. They have not figured out a global release yet. So hopefully they figure that out soon, because we've got a lot of fans who are eager to watch this for all around the world, and we're hoping that the film producers figure that out, or distributors or whatever.
Yeah, I hope it will happen soon because I would also like to see it. Um,
Yeah, it's really good. I do think, you know, and I always say I'm a fan of film more than I am music. Film is like my passion, and that's what I was at university for and everything. So even though I'm in it, unbiased, I do think it's a great documentary, you know,
mhm.
like anyway. And my film student friends were all like, I went to watch it because you're in it, but actually, it's a pretty good documentary, you know, like from just a sort of objective view, I guess. So I do recommend it to anybody who likes documentaries.
Cool. And if you're saying that you're such a film nerd and film lover, what's your favorite movie of all time?
My favorite movie of all time is The Road to El Dorado. It's an animated DreamWorks film from the early 2000s. And that was like my childhood film. So that's my like nostalgia film, and it will always be my number one. Great soundtrack by Elton John on it. It's a, yeah. I watch that movie probably like a good 4 times a year.
And how is it to be a metal band in New Zealand? How is the metal scene in New Zealand?
The metal scene in New Zealand is good. It's just very small. Um, Obviously, we're already a small country. 5 million is the population of New Zealand. And New Zealand is I would like to know the statistics, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the most popular genres are drum and bass, electronic music, and then like reggae, hip hop, R&B, the usual thing. So the metal popularity is somewhere down here. So unless you're really big, like Slipknot, for example, or just maybe they already played, but they're playing like in this within this coming week, can do big shows here. Um, a lot of the time, like you're seeing, you know, even us, we play much smaller venues in New Zealand than we used to be playing overseas, just because the people aren't there to listen to it necessarily, you know. And New Zealand also has quite an extreme metal scene. So like you find a lot of metal bands here are like really, really metal, you know. But it's cool. It's a good scene. I think it's a growing scene as well. Especially as more and more bands are coming out now and getting the sort of exposure they deserve.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, we speaking of New Zealand, we're doing a New Zealand tour in 1 week. So we're about to hit the road, and it's been 5 years since we last did a headline run in New Zealand, so it feels like a long time. We're very excited. And then the album drops, of course, and then it's currently blank. They have not scheduled us for anything yet. And the only word we've heard is the very ominous "be prepared for something."
Ooh.
Okay, thanks. You know, so we're as uneducated about it as the readers and the listeners will be, um, until further notice. So we have no idea what's happening further than the album release.
I hope it's going to be something good.
We can only hope, the last album dropped in COVID, so we weren't able to do any tours when the album dropped, which was awful. So we're hoping that that doesn't happen again.
And do you want to say anything to your fans before we end this interview?
Oh, just the usual. Thank you so much for the support. The response so far to the singles has been almost overwhelming, because we were quite nervous going into this album about it all, and we're feeling super like happy about what's been said so far, and we can only hope that you guys just enjoy digging into the full album when it's finally there for you guys, because we there are some stuff on there that we love, that the labels are like, it's not really a single. And we're like, but we love the song. So we're really excited for you to like get stuck into the final product.
Cool, then. Thank you so much for the nice interview, too.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much. Until next time.
Yes, and goodbye from the Music Interview Corner.
See you later, everybody.